Awesome, guys. Hey, Josh, Carissa. It's so nice to meet you guys in person.
Yeah.
Estee Pizza, Park City, Utah. We're driving in. It took us longer to get here than it normally should because it's a Friday in the winter, right? And people are driving to the hill, they're driving to the mountain, and so you're seeing this traffic driven into the city. Remarkably, or not remarkably, arguably some of the best snow in the world. Is that right?
Absolutely.
That's
It
kind
says
of
it
like
on the license plate.
right. It says it. It says it there. It
true.
has to be. Right?
It's our bread and butter in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, Estee Pizza, you guys tell us a little bit about the Estee story.
Well, you go ahead. You started it.
I don't know what year it was, probably 2005 or 6. I lived in Sugar House and noticed there was a cool little pizzeria opened and got a job there. Worked there for a couple of years, and then a few years after that, I used to go on tour with my band, and then when I would come back, I'd have to get another job. And I found out that one of the guys I worked with at the Sugar House location opened up the downtown location,
Oh, cool.
and called him up and worked for him, worked up to kind of management. And then Carissa grew up here, so
In Park City.
Yep.
yeah. And
So
so I was
what-
like, I know how to do this. Let's open one in Park City.
Yeah.
At what point were you guys, did you get married? Were you, like, did this start out when you were young before Carissa?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then when he got back from tour, we knew each other in high school,
Okay.
and so
Oh,
he got back from tour, and we linked up again and got married
awesome.
and decided that we wanted to open a pizzeria in Park City. And then
Yeah.
it's been 9 years. I was 8.5 months pregnant when we opened, and
and why not?
yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
like,
Just do it all
Why
at
not
once.
just get
At
it
one
all?
time,
yeah.
Right?
Like have 2 babies at once.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
That's exactly what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
It was a really good plan.
Yeah, it's like, and now you're an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding.
It's always so funny the opening, the timing of things. Like you're like, never would you do this. Like, well, I'm gonna finish high school, then I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna get the degree, and then I'm gonna do all the you have it sequentially, and then real life hits, and you're like, okay, we have this opportunity, like we can go now, but the baby, what do we do? How do we do this? But yet you're like, let's do both,
Yeah.
right? Which is such the entrepreneur
Well,
life.
I think we had started the process of
Opening
of
Estee
trying to
before.
open an Estee, and then found out she was pregnant
Got it.
afterwards. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, so you have the background, like you were actually working in the business and like grew up in the business. So
Yeah.
you knew like how to operate
Yeah.
it well.
Yeah.
What were you doing before you guys opened? Like, did you have a business background? Like you're managing all the kind of like administrative
Yeah.
back end things.
I did not have a business background. I was actually working for the state of Utah for the Division of Water Rights. So
Okay.
I was doing field work, I was doing environmental stuff, and then decided to leave that behind and do this instead.
So wildly different. Like
Vastly
giant
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dramatically different.
Yeah, yeah, and I did have background in doing like payroll and taxes and QuickBooks
Okay.
with
Okay.
my dad's company. I also helped him on the side. He has a construction company up
Yeah.
here, and so I was helping him
Ah.
with that. And so it wasn't quite as big of a stretch to use QuickBooks and do all of
Well,
that.
yeah, she
Yeah.
does all the back end paperwork
Yeah.
stuff, and I'm the day to day in
Gotcha.
ordering, inventory, training, stuff like that.
Yep.
So you kind of grew up even with this small business, like whether it was your dad and then you're like, hey, let's transition into this. Like it was kind of like, I think sometimes with entrepreneurs, like just the start, it just seems overwhelming and daunting and just like the jump, like how do I take the jump?
Yeah.
But you kind of grew up in that space or that environment where, was it like dad owned this?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Him and a partner, and they're still building houses up here today.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah. So, and I still help them on the side today too.
Oh,
so,
you really?
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's very
That's
cool.
very cool. That's
So-
very cool. So 9 Inch Nails allowed you the time to come and start this, is that right?
Can you just tell us what kind of band it was?
I guess in a vague sense, you could compare it to that, but
Yeah. Kind of hardcore, screamy.
yeah.
Sure.
punk.
What did you
And,
play?
yeah, what did you-
What do you
Sing.
like? You're the singer?
No
Well, give us some.
way.
Let's go. What'd you? Come on now.
I'm a screamer.
Oh, you're one of those. Gotcha.
Little
We'll
bit
put our
of
hand
singing.
over the mic. Go ahead. Well, that's awesome. So that's kind of the start,
Yeah.
right? So you worked in it for a while. You guys are getting married. Like, hey, here's an opportunity. Park City. coming back home to a degree. That's started. Let's get it started. So that was the start. How's it been? How long has it been since you started, and how's it been?
We opened December 2014, and it has been a wild ride. I think
So like 9 years. You just
Yeah, 9
you just
years.
celebrated 9 years of being open.
we did.
It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. It's knowing what we know now, we may have chosen a different location. But that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
We love Park City. We love our community.
Yeah.
We love the people here. But just the seasonality makes it difficult.
Sure.
Yeah.
And also with that seasonality comes staffing challenges because
Sure.
people don't stay for long stretches. They
Yeah.
come for the winter and then they leave.
Yeah, and
Come for the summer.
having a permanent
leave.
long-term staff is very difficult. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like staff stability
Yeah.
is just
Yes.
a challenge.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't blame them. I mean, the whole town's like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a come and
just
go thing.
Park City.
So
Yeah.
So tell us, like, what are the seasons, busy season, kind of like,
winter and
What's that
summer
flow?
are very
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah. So like December, January, February, March starts to taper. It's like truly just the ski season
Yeah.
Sure.
that's really busy. And then summer has actually picked up a lot in the last few years.
awesome.
We see a lot more hiking, mountain biking. Park City as a whole has really tried to push summer tourism. And so we see like June through, I would say, late August is pretty busy
Maybe
as well.
mid-September.
Mid-September, yeah.
Okay.
And then it drops off again until December. So.
Okay.
Which makes no sense to me because fall is like the most beautiful
Yeah,
It's so
fall,
gorgeous.
fall,
time of
Wonderful.
year.
Yeah.
to
fall
be
isn't
in
quite
Utah.
as slow as the spring is. The
Yeah.
spring is just
Okay.
crickets. But
Yeah.
So that's how it's been. So it just kind of like that's kind of the rhythm of like, I don't know, traffic and busyness and the seasonality of it. So that's been the challenge with staffing.
Yeah.
Obviously the challenge with budgeting, and you're like, okay, so this is our feast, this is our famine. Like you kind of have to be strategic
Yep.
about that.
yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Right. And then even like I can imagine like, you think about seasonal workers that maybe are easier to find. Like, how about like management? Like so that you guys aren't here, because I know like Sundance Film Festival happens and you guys just pull up a camper in the back and just live here for a week, or
That
like
would be
how does
me.
that?
I work doubles every day during Sundance pretty much. And the week between Christmas and New Year's, those two are by far the busiest.
Just absolutely slammed.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And we
Wow.
have been able to find a couple different general managers that we've had that are local and, live here year round. And that's worked out, really well. I mean, they've all been hired from within.
Sure.
And so just because they know the processes of everything, our current general manager, I'm not sure if she's coming back or not, is on maternity leave right now. And so that's been kind of a shift in the way that we are involved, because now
Yeah.
we're both here significantly more. Well, Josh is here significantly more, but I've also taken on more of the front of house management again. So
Yeah.
that's been interesting. And it's also good because it kind of
it's-
puts us back
It's good to
into it
step
a little
back
bit
in and
more.
make sure that things are happening the way you want them to be done. You know?
Yeah.
So
I want to come back to that, but I want to back up a little bit too and just talk about a little bit about like how 2020 was and how that's really impacted your business and kind of since then as well.
Yeah. So 2020 was actually one of our better years,
Wow.
simply because the community came out in mass and were supporting the restaurants that they loved,
Yeah.
which was so
Well, and
incredibly thankful
pizza's
for.
the exact stay-at-home food.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So we did
Yeah.
better than a lot of other places
Yeah.
did
Sure.
during that.
Yeah.
And we did shift so that we did a lot of our own, all of our own deliveries for a long time, because we didn't have the indoor dining traffic. And so
Sure.
any server, we just
Transition
for
to
deliveries.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we shifted a lot in that. We also remodeled the space so that way we have this counter that's behind you both now. So it's more of a come in, order, rather than a sit down, the server comes
Sure.
over,
Yeah.
Sure.
which helps alleviate some of our lunch rush, so that we can still have kind of a smaller staff,
Yeah.
but they can handle it. And it makes it so
Yeah,
that
that
it
people
flows.
people
makes
line
sense.
up instead of all sit down at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It helps
you
with the flow.
pivoted and innovated
Yes.
in that season.
Yeah.
So it was interesting how like, crisis happens, and it's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a crisis because like how you ran Estee had to change in that season,
Mm-hmm.
but also here's an opportunity to innovate Because when you come back, like you're coming back even stronger at that point, right? Like lower staff cost. You know, I mean, that's a great move. It's interesting how a lot of, if you're not in an entrepreneurial mindset, like you won't pivot. You just get stuck. Like, how are we going to do this? People have to come in. But the fact that you pivoted and moved and then innovated, well done. Nice work. I'm sure that even helped with the ability to have such a huge season, in 2020. And I think that was even nationwide, because you saw like a lot of people like, hey, let's help the small businesses. Let's really give back, make sure that
for a few weeks, everyone was in it together.
Yeah. You're right. For a few weeks. And then it was like, we're in it together. And then it was like, you're actually on your own.
Yeah.
And how did that go?
Well, and we did have there were groups that they called it Tuesday Supper Club. And so they would essentially just mob one restaurant.
Cool.
And they would like switch. And so that was really cool. And that lasted for quite a while longer. After like 2021, when things started opening back up, was a little bit more difficult because there wasn't that like focused attention.
Yeah, that's when we saw kind of a decline.
A little bit of a dip.
Yeah. And 2022 was even more difficult, which was interesting. It felt like people were like traveling less also. And so, we didn't see our huge winter season that we typically see. 2023 with the giant winter that we had, we were shocked that we didn't have the same traffic.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
but I mean,
or 2022, we had a huge winter. 2023, this is this season.
Yeah.
But it's only, within the last few months that we've brought all of our tables back in, because, we spaced them out in 2020 and all that.
Yeah.
It's only now back to where it was in 2019 as far as the feel of, But,
So with that, thinking about, like you just said, 2020, 21, 22, like those seasons, we're at the end of, this is the 23, 24 season. So like with the inflation, the rising food costs, how have you seen that affect like your overall, your revenue for the year, your overall profit margin?
It's been pretty rough.
Yeah, it's been, our food costs went through the roof, and like our pizza box costs at one point were it was like $1 per box or more.
It was like $1.30 per box before the pandemic. It was probably 30 cents.
Oh, wow.
And everything across the board did that. And we couldn't find stuff.
We couldn't find pizza boxes for a long time.
We couldn't find chicken wings for like 2 months. Like
Wow.
there was
The
stuff
chicken wing
all over
shortage
the
Which
for
place.
that's
you guys
not
too.
okay, because
Yeah.
you guys have really
Yeah.
good chicken wings.
Yeah,
Like,
your
I'm sure
wings
people were
need to be
very upset about
experienced.
that. I would have
I mean,
been.
yeah, wow. So
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty rough. Like I said, only now does it seem like all of that stuff is kind of normalized again. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, and our food costs haven't necessarily come down, but we did end up raising prices because we absorbed it for as long as we possibly could. And then it got to the point where it was like, we either close or we increase our prices and be competitive because other places had done it.
Everything else costs more. We have to charge more.
Yeah. And
have to pay our employees more. We have
how
to,
much pushback did you guys get from customers?
Hardly any. We even printed up a little thing and laminated it like, hey, all the costs have gone up. We had to do this. Sorry.
We are so sorry.
Nobody cared.
yeah, everybody
I was very surprised.
took it in stride.
Which is so good. I mean, I know you guys like really fought that, and you did not take it lightly because we were really starting to coach with you right around that time, right?
Yeah.
That you had kind of had to like redo everything, and I know that like kind of weighed on you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always interesting too, like you're a small business. And I mean, Park City, it's world renowned. Olympics have been here. Olympics might come back here, but it's
I
still
heard
a
it's
small.
official coming
Is
back.
it official?
Yep.
I think so.
Did we just
Yeah,
make the
it's 20,
announcement?
2032.
32.
Yeah.
We just made the announcement right today. Right? 23. You heard it first. But you think about that, it's still a small town feel, right?
Yeah.
When the Olympics isn't here, when everyone from the world doesn't show up here to ski, right?
Yeah.
So it's still a small town vibe to a degree. And you're a small business owner in a small community, and you're still very aware of, hey, like, if we raise prices, how is this going to affect people,
Yeah.
right? It weighed on you. I know when we were talking about it, we were encouraging you to do so. So you could blame us if someone did have an issue. Like, hey, call Jeff and Allie, right? Take it up with them.
Yeah.
It's gonna help you
But-
out a lot.
I just remember you guys, like, in that conversation, you guys, to a degree, like, agonize is strong, but you were in a tough spot because you're like, oh man, and and I think this is really like the life of an entrepreneur and small business owner. You're like, okay, how do we absorb these fees, this increasing costs to do business? And you've done that for 2 years
Yeah.
and not raise the
Yeah.
prices even 3 years. And you're like, guys, like, how have you not at this point? You have to
Yeah.
at this point,
Yeah.
you know? And so it wasn't an easy decision that you guys made.
Well, I think there was always this assumption that things would like even out again or something,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
didn't really.
Yeah.
I mean, some prices came back down a little, but across the board, everything costs more now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And I even think about, like, this is like, I love the story, the innovate piece. Like, we talked about one of the conversations we had. Like, we've been coaching you guys maybe 3 months now. Is that kind of ballpark?
so-
One of the conversations we had, you talked about the garlic knots, talking about innovating, right? How do we keep costs down? How do we leverage? How do we use things and be really good stewards of everything we have rather than throwing this excess dough away? What do we do with it?
Mhm.
And even tell us a little bit about the garlic knots, because I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought, until we experienced it. And I was like, I want these every day. Like, they're so good. So even the innovating piece, tell us a little bit about the garlic knot piece.
Well, I mean, they're just, we have 3 different sizes of pizza, but we have one size of dough that we make.
Yeah.
So you have to cut off a little bit for the smaller pizzas. And that was just excess dough that would have been thrown away. So we tie it in a knot and bake them and put garlic and oregano and oil on them. But then I was with it's such a low cost to us.
Yeah.
It's profit, most of it,
Yeah.
And so that's why we put on these little bribe is such an ugly word signs with a QR code.
Yeah.
People can get a free order of garlic knots if they give us a 5-star Google review, and that worked great. We have a ton of great reviews now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
for
And-
something that's low cost and low,
Yeah.
labor to us.
So I even love that, like the low cost, low labor, innovation. I mean, your Google reviews, like, I mean, what do you do? Like, in today's day and age, people fly into town, they fly into Park City, they're hungry for pizza, they look on Google, all of a sudden, Estee, what's this Estee place? You know, and then
Yeah.
how many, 5-star reviews? Like, oh, let's buy from Estee.
Yeah.
You know, like something that you used to maybe throw away has now even driven revenue because you've innovated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well,
So-
and I would like to thank you guys for the advertising idea and, like, hey, how do you get more positive reviews? How do you do that? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah.
And bribery.
Bribe is such an ugly word. Yeah, we're not above it.
And we use it all the time with our kids,
Which
so
by the
it's
way,
got to make sense.
Do you
Like,
have any garlic knots right now? Like, is it too early? Is it no? They're so good.
yeah.
You were gonna ask a question.
So as we've been working with them, one of the things is Josh is really in the business, kind of on the ground, working in the restaurant, and Carissa's doing kind of the back end things. And I was seeing that they were working well together, but it wasn't like this coordinated effort. And how can we really be like on the same page and working on our goals together? And so now they're having weekly meetings where they're really talking about, like, what are our metrics? Like, how are we doing? Do we know our revenue? Do we understand what our numbers are? And how, like, the levers that we can pull to try to increase, revenue or decrease expenses. So now they're working together on those things. They're on the same page. They both know their information each week. And they're holding each other accountable to working on their projects that they've set, like documenting all of these processes, and then really like talking through their major issues each and every week. So I'm seeing them really beginning to work as a team, a really strong partnership, and it's bringing them, they're making so much more progress on these big goals. In the last month than they made, these were just kind of things they wanted, but they didn't know how to tackle them. how to make progress on them. So they're making amazing progress on these big things now.
I don't know what they said about they've transitioned from living in the reactive to being more proactive. And you can only do that when you have a process in place that helps you, brings you together. And I always say without a process, everything feels personal, especially when you're working husband and wife together or, visionary and integrator. If there's not a clear process, it always feels personal. Oh, you didn't do that? Oh, you didn't do that? Oh, you didn't? And then there's this angst and this emotion that you have to overcome just to get your job done. As opposed to feeling like, hey, we're on the same page and we're a team in this, as opposed to we're opposing forces trying to go in the same direction but we're out of alignment.
Well, and speaking the same language, using the same systems. Josh had a to-do list, Carissa didn't. They didn't even use the same system. So it's really hard to sync up when you're not doing it the same way, right? Yeah. So I was going to just get into a little bit more like what you're working on currently, what some of the goals and plans are for growth. I know when we started working together, one of the main things that we were really talking about is like, if you want to grow, we have to get you out of just the business really relying upon you two and Josh, you working doubles during busy seasons and things like that. So just talk a little bit more about like what some of those goals are and how we've been working on getting there.
Our staff right now is phenomenal. We have such a wonderful team that takes such great care of everything when we're not here. With our general manager stepping away for maternity leave, that's something that we really need to circle back on. And we've had that discussion quite a bit about how to, the time is coming to figure out exactly what's going to happen. And either we need to have a new general manager that can step in and take Josh's position and, really take the load off of his shoulders and then take on this with the understanding that they are going to be it. And we are going to be focusing somewhere else on another location. And so...
and focusing on ways that we can help from outside the business rather than inside of it,
Work on it rather than in it.
100%.
So, and that's another thing that we've talked about quite a bit is building out management books and, really creating different processes to make sure that there are fail safes so that everybody knows exactly what to do if this situation happens and they don't rely on us.
Right.
They can just say, okay, we know that this is what we do when this happens.
Well, and you guys have given us a lot of tools to put that into motion. So
That's awesome.
We're getting there.
Well, I remember the one time we were talking, one of the coaching sessions we were in, you mentioned that one of your GMs called you 12 times in a day or 12 times in an afternoon.
Well, it wasn't a GM, but it was...
one of our employees.
We're just like, what? Clearly they're like, you're the 911. We're calling Carissa.
Well, and I do appreciate that they really wanted to make sure that what they were doing was right. And, I appreciate them having that desire to really communicate. But also,
yes.
Well, and that's where
we need to have those systems in place to where they don't need to be calling us all the time.
I think those situations, although it wasn't a good reason for you being gone, you were away for a funeral, correct? But they show us so much about where we're at in our business and just kind of how much our business relies upon us or not. And sometimes we're pleasantly surprised. And you were in ways, right? You were like, they crushed it. But there were still 13 phone calls, right? So it was that shows us so much.
Well, I think there's always this unique tension as entrepreneurs and business owners. We started something, it's our vision. We want to feel wanted and needed until we want a vacation.
And then please don't
and then do not call me, do not email me, my phone is off, don't. And that's really what you're saying. It reveals, oh wow, how intimately needed am I in my business? Because if you can't step away for a week and not get a phone call, that means okay, I'm too much in the business, working too much in the business rather than on the business. And even for you guys thinking about you're in charge, there's no plan B, don't call me, we're going to be focused elsewhere. Obviously you're not don't you dare call me, but just from the standpoint of hey, we're focused elsewhere, you guys got it. You're prepared, you know what you're doing, core processes are in place, you know how to run the plan. Truly, the 911, the emergency phone call, it's different when all the core processes are in place and people know and they're trained and they understand you're the right people in the right seats, right?
Absolutely.
Then a 911 is legitimately a 911.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, hey, where's the Parmesan cheese? Where did that, where's the red pepper flakes? It's like, oh my gosh.
It's like there's a fire outside of
Right.
the building.
Yeah. Then call. That makes sense.
I called 911 first and then called you to let you know.
Right. And it's interesting because so often it can be, we get frustrated at staff. Like, oh my gosh, please, why don't you just, and it's like, really, it can be a reflection of our management and a reflection of like the core processes that we don't have in place and we haven't set them up for success. And so even from that standpoint, like, okay, how do we get to that place?
Yeah.
And I'm glad.
Well, it's just, I'm used to being the one that does all that. It's just what I've always done, you know what I mean? Rather than putting, like you said, the process in place for other people to do it, and not be calling us about it. So.
Yeah. What have been some of the helpful tools in like changing your mindset on that or helping to make progress in that way, like really documenting things, handing things off?
Well, I think and I can't remember exactly what it was, but like document 20% of 80%, like simplify it.
Yeah.
And just make sure that it's really clear and concise and to the point so that you don't add all of the other kind of unnecessary, like this is just in my brain because this is what I do stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And making it so that it's easy to understand and that they're clear
Making it universal.
steps.
Yeah. So a huge focus that we've been talking about a ton is how to document what they do best so that they can really train in their general manager, a shift lead, and even their team members, and really feeling like no matter if they're there or not, the quality is going to be there. And so it's even things like, how do we open well? What are the steps to opening? Sometimes there's timing elements that if you're just getting started, you don't understand like how to time it out well. Or, how do you make a pizza so that every pizza is consistent? These are such simple things, but sometimes we take it for granted, like there's tribal knowledge. Like we all just know it because we've been here for years. But a brand new person stepping in, how do we teach them all of these things right off the bat?
And this is what you always talk about, like so often we don't know our own secret sauce.
Yeah.
We don't know how the sauce is made, right? And so this is a way of putting simple systems in place, the 80-20 principle, where literally like our simple systems are in place so that the secret sauce is always there for everyone to experience.
Yep, not just in Josh's head, but it's transferable to the whole team.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
So the 80-20 idea, fill us in a little bit more. I'd say something, but I'd probably totally butcher it. You're much better at this than me, so ready to go.
No, just the idea is like getting our core processes documented. And for so many people, that feels like a very overwhelming task. Like most of us don't enjoy that process. It's usually on top of everything else we're trying to accomplish in our everyday. And so the idea is just like, let's not try to make a whole to-do list or like exactly how to list, because that's very time consuming. So let's just document 20% of the steps that carry 80% of the value in a certain process. What are those big things that there will be like a big oopsie, or we're not getting the quality of service that we want if we skip these steps in the process? And so that's what we've talked about. And I think when you think of it that way, like what are the main bullet points, it feels much more achievable to get things documented and passed off.
Well, and one thing we even talk about the idea of like, okay, so consistency, making sure that all of the, the pizzas come out with, is it 13 pepperonis? Is it 17? Or is there some people like, well, I got 30 pepperonis. Who's the guy on Saturday night? I got 30 pepperoni slices. That's awesome. Everyone else is like 15. We're like, okay, we need consistency, right?
Yeah.
Just talking about that core process, but even talking about like, let's take pictures because it's show or tell, right? Like, let's just show what it looks like as opposed to 13 specific pepperonis and exponent, so even that idea, because I think sometimes when you talk about a core process, documenting them, whether it's here's how you make a pizza or here is an employee manual, whatever it might be. I think when you're working in the business, like personally for me, that idea, it's overwhelming. I'm like, how am I ever going to create a textbook about how to create a pizza? And you're like, just take a picture.
Yeah.
Just make it simple.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, hey, here's what it looks like. Let's show rather than tell this whole huge document. Like, let's
Right.
do that, you know, the 20% that is going to create the 80% more efficiency.
We
Yeah.
usually don't have to get as granular as we think we would need to in order to create consistency. And I think that's the main idea. Like, it can be a simple process. We just have to document it.
Yeah.
Okay, so thinking about this, so we have the documentation, we have the core process, we have systems in place, talking about the management type piece, you guys saying, hey, okay, you guys are in charge, we're off doing what's next.
So what is next?
Can we talk about it? Is it top secret? The Olympics are coming, we
in
just
general
made that.
terms,
Like, yeah.
grand vision, like
Yeah.
what,
Hopefully opening a second location and
Yeah.
maybe working with the other stores to create a food truck so that we can be at
Oh,
like the
Events.
state fair, really big events.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think for us personally, a second location in the valley is kind of on our radar. So
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, if we could get this location to mostly run independently for the most part,
Yeah.
with, you know, watching over it, but mostly focusing on another location closer to where we live is kind of the next move, I think,
That's awesome.
someday.
That's very exciting.
It is. Not to put you on the spot, but like, okay, so our coaching practice is called Wake Coaching, which it's all about your legacy. What are you leaving behind? And that really gets to the why you do what you do. Why do you want to own a business? Why do you want to grow it? Like, what would be your guys' why for all of it?
Financial independence.
I mean, yeah, that, and also, I think the like building community spaces is really exciting and really neat, and you know, seeing the regulars that come in and like really getting
Yeah.
to know them and having a place where people come and enjoy food, but also make memories and like spend time with their family and are excited when they come in and giving back to the community, like.
Well, and that's what's exciting about the prospect of another location is getting to know another community, you know, and getting
Yeah.
involved in that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, and Park City's wonderful, and we've kind of found our niche with the like outdoor adventure
Yeah.
type, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of why we're considering like Cottonwood Heights area, because
Sure.
those same people are right there by the
Yeah.
Cottonwood Canyons, and
Yep.
we know what they like. We know
Yeah.
you know we know our customer base. I
demographic,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah. So see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do we have a date? Are we like,
No.
not that far yet. We're going to use what we learned from you guys to get this place whipped into shape,
love
and then
it.
we'll go there.
Yeah, exactly.
well, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, once we have all of our manuals actually written, which are on our rocks list, which is really nice to have a quarter to get big projects
Yes.
done. That makes it feel a lot more doable rather than like, okay, you have 2 weeks and you have to have this whole manual done. Like that is just so overwhelming. So it's nice to have a chunk of time where you can say, okay, I'm going to work on this for 10 minutes today.
Yeah, just a little
I'm
by
going to get
little.
it done. I'm going to get this piece done, and then at the end, it's done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
What is the thing you always say about like underestimating what we can accomplish?
Yeah, you underestimate what you overestimate what you can accomplish in a year, and underestimate what you can accomplish in 5 years. So that's like John Maxwell, leadership coach. That's one of the things that he would always say, because you think like, you know, like, oh, I got 2 weeks, let's knock this out, and then real life sets in, and then like you're working a double, you're like, I can hardly even think straight and see straight, and I'm tired, and then you have this overwhelming like, well, I have to get this done, and then what happens is you might get a bit salty about it, and then if you do actually put time into it, you're not going to put quality time into it.
Yeah.
So this idea of like, we talk about like, what's the difference between a to-do and a rock, right? A to-do is something you get done in 7 days. Like realistically, can I do this in 7 days?
Yeah.
Right? But a rock is like, okay, that's actually going to take me 90 days to get done.
Yeah.
And what that does, it alleviates the pressure, and it helps you take just bite-sized pieces of it rather than working on it like an employee manual. Oh my gosh. Like, unless you're using like specifically, you know, AI to help you or stealing it from someone else, like 2 weeks, forget it.
Yeah, there's no way.
There's no way, right? And so then you're in that space, and you're like, okay, how do I do this effectively, efficiently, and so I never have to do it again,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so that's the rock components. That's actually, yeah, so really the idea, like overestimating what you can do in 7 days and underestimate what you can do in 90 days.
Yeah.
Like the rock component.
Yeah, yeah. And it's been so helpful to be able to break things off on like a to-do list because I know Josh always has like a master list. But me being able to sit down and be like, okay, it is Monday. These are the things that I have to accomplish.
Well, and before now, my list was never organized. It was just a giant, like, all these things need to happen sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like prioritization is
Yeah.
missing a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's been super helpful for me personally, just to know that like, okay, these are my things that I have to do this week, and these are the things that I need to focus on in the next 90 days. And I can accomplish both of them and still do everything else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things that we tackle, because I think like when I talk to especially a lot of visionaries and just business owners overall, like there's a little bit of this learned helplessness. And what I mean by that is like if they've tried to set, you know, priorities or goals, they've continually not hit them. And so they generally just start feeling like, what's the point? And then they just stop. They just stop setting goals because they're and they live reactively because they're like, I try, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
And they absolutely can. I just think what they're missing is just a system, like a framework of
Yeah.
organization, helping you to prioritize and really manage, like trying to move big things along while you're also managing the business on a day-to-day basis. Those things are competing. And if you don't have a system for really managing both, the day-to-day will always take over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that's like when I find people, that's usually where they're at, is just like a place of like, I surrender to the day-to-day whirlwind and I'm just gonna let it kind of own me. And that's where we start with like, how do we manage a to-do list? It sounds basic, but it's just about like taming that whirlwind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's key.
Well, and like we talked about being proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
It makes it so much less stressful to be proactive rather than just to be like, oh no, this is happening right now. I have to take care of this immediately. So that's something that I really have appreciated also learning from you guys.
Me too.
that
I've been reactive on realizing, you know,
in
the
the
past,
past.
yeah.
Yeah. And now both trying to be more proactive.
Yeah.
So
And it's so easy to slide into that space because it is the, you know, like, well, I have to be there, I have to cover, I have to do it, I have to, like, it's very reactive based upon the need, based upon the order, based upon whatever it might be, the crisis, and you jump in, and rather than actually like building your business, you're in more crisis management mode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens is if you're not like really intentional about creating that break, you just get sucked into that adrenaline rush, that drama, whatever it might be. And you have to be very strategic to like, okay, time out. I have to step back. I have to disengage for a moment, let my own like, you know, adrenaline levels come down to a degree.
Yeah.
And because what happens is we give our lives to the default rather than designing our future. And so even in that piece, like that's the reactive, proactive, it's such a huge thing. Writing lists, prioritizing, it's so valuable, it's so important. I'm glad that like you guys are like, you've experienced that.
yeah.
For
You're like,
sure.
life is
Yeah.
better on this side, right?
Yeah.
So much better. I don't ever want to go back to the other side.
Right.
Until we open another location, and then we'll probably be in that mode for a little
Yeah.
bit. But
Yeah.
we'll know because we'll know better.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
better tools.
Awesome.
Well, we have absolutely loved working with you guys. You are so much fun. And
Seriously.
we love you and we love what you do. We love pizza. We want to help you.
Like for real, we came here with our
um,
kids and ate the pizza. It was so good.
It was so
like
good.
it was so
They loved
I'm
it.
glad.
like for
They
real, New
ate
York
way
style.
more food than I
Oh, it was
would ever
crazy.
remember. Yeah,
It was awesome.
that's awesome.
So for real,
Mhm.
thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
for
Thanks, you
jumping
guys.
in,
This
Yeah.
is great.
being
Yeah.
a part of
It's gonna be a
this.
huge help,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah. We really, really appreciate all of your knowledge and everything that you have shared with us, and like it is extremely, extremely valuable. So
Well,
whoever gets to
agreed.
work with you,
that's
they're
awesome.
very lucky.
Yeah, they are.
Well, we
Thank
love
you.
that. And we're excited for location 2 and beyond.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just seeing the impact that you guys do make on your community.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. So,
For sure.
yes.
Other people need to experience Estee. They need to
Yeah.
experience this pizza. So
Yeah.
good. It's so good. Seriously, Josh, Carissa, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
today. Thank you for the time we've spent together. So appreciate it. For real.
Thank you both.
Absolutely. I love those guys. For real. Josh and Carissa, they're so great. It's been so
Yes.
fun working with them because, you know, you think about like just their potential, just who they are as human beings. Like they're wonderful. We talk about like so often in our coaching, we talk about like a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And they're clearly like, they're really sharp individuals. Their product is top notch. It is such good pizza. I love pizza, connoisseur of pizza, love pizza my whole life. And it's so good, but they're also in a space where they're like, hey, we want to grow. We're not fixed and like, this isn't how we have to do it. They're like, hey, help us do better.
So open to learning. Yeah. And so many of the people we work with, it's really just, they can't see how they can step out of the business so that they can continue growing it. Really, just even improving the quality, that can be growth, right? So continue growing their current business and expanding it beyond. And so that's what we've really been helping them with, is just what are the steps to pulling out of it a little bit so it's running on its own and you can continue working on the business.
It has been honestly such an honor to work with Estee. Josh and Carissa, they're incredible human beings. And you can see the potential, you can see how amazing they are. And that's what we love about working with entrepreneurs and small business owners, is because they have this passion. They have this amazing product, but oftentimes what holds them back is their processes. They don't have great processes to take them from good to great. And that's where we're able to step in and really help just put simple systems in place, simple processes in place to help them move forward. And so maybe today you're watching, you're like, man, I would love a little bit of a checkup. I have a passion, I have the product, but I feel like the processes are holding me back. That's where we can step in and really help you design your processes rather than living by default. You can be more proactive rather than reactive. So that's interesting to you. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us there. You can call us. And we also have a free survey we would love for you to take. And we could even take 30 minutes to talk more about your business and hear about how we could help what you're doing.
So our first sit down with you is always free. We always want to add value to your lives before anything else. And so just know that we would love to hear from you. Please get in touch.
Thanks.